good. Okay. So a few logistical things. You should be able to download this. I don't know if I'm going to necessarily make it available to download. Sometimes I'll create an audio version. There'll be a video and an audio version, but I will probably make it available for you to download. You'll definitely be able to see a replay, especially if you're here now. So if you're asking me this, then you're obviously here. So you'll be able to get a replay, and you'll probably be able to download this. Okay. All right. Now, there's an area where you can ask questions. It's a question and answer area. Depending on the device that you're on, just kind of explore it. And if you kick yourself out, just come back in again. But there's a question and answer area. And if possible, I'd love for you to put your questions there. And I probably won't get to them until the end, okay? Because I want to really go through this relatively quickly. I want to try to keep the meat of this webinar to around 30 minutes. I may not be able to do that. It may come out to be 45 minutes, but you'll be here no longer than an hour, right? Most webinars are at least an hour, so you'll be here no more than an hour. I'm going to try to keep the meat to about 30 minutes or so, and then I want to look and answer some of your questions. So there's a question and answer area where you can obviously enter your questions, and then I'll go look and try to answer them as best as I can. So try not to put your questions in the chat box because the chat box scrolls and I may not see them, okay? So questions, put them in the question and answer. If you can't find that for one reason or another, put them in the chat box. And if at the end, as I'm going through the question and answers, if I miss yours, then send me a chat and say, hey, I had this question, okay? The other thing that we're going to be doing is I'm just going to be going through the list. I may ask you a couple of questions, and then we're going to select one person to receive one of my self-study programs absolutely free. So it's like a drawing. So for those of you that remain until the end, we'll do this at the very end and select one person who doesn't have any of the self-studies to receive one of my self-studies for being here today and for staying until the end, okay? It's just random selection. All right. Any other questions before we get started? Wonderful. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to jump right into this, and the reason is this particular webinar was sent to, that is, I invited a very select group of people. So normally when I have a webinar, I will invite my entire list, which is over 15,000 people. I've been building this list for many years. But I only selected a certain number of people to invite to this webinar, and you're amongst that select group of people. And those people were people who have been more responsive to emails and so forth. So if you've been reading emails and opening the emails, then you got an invitation to this webinar. If you were not, then you wouldn't know that, and you were not selected to be on this webinar, okay? So I did that because I want to jump right into the content here and not do a whole lot of introductory work. Many of you should know who I am because you're on my list, and I hope that you had a chance to actually take a look at my story so that you can understand more about who I am and what I do. So I'm not going to waste time with that. Not that it's a waste, but I want to spend time with that today. I'm going to jump right into the content here, and that is, you are probably here today because you are interested in speaking more smoothly. You want to speak smoother. You're interested in speaking with a rhythm and a flow. That's the title, right? This is smoothly with rhythm and flow. So we're simply going to take those words, those concepts, skills, break them down, and I'm going to give you an exercise, right? I'm going to give you something that's actionable that you can implement for each of those skills. Speaking smoothly is a skill. So I'm going to give you exercise to practice it. Speaking with the rhythm is a skill. Give you exercise. Speaking with flow is a skill. In fact, we're going to start with flow. Okay, so hopefully you can see what I write here on the board. If not, don't worry about it. But so we're talking about smooth speech, rhythmic, rhythmic speech, and then speech that has a flow. Okay, so these are the things that we're going to be talking about today. And we're going to start with flow. We're going to start with flow. Now, before we do that, let's talk about why you probably want to speak smoothly and with a rhythm and a flow. And it really has less to do with stuttering as it does the result of or the impact of speaking smoothly and with a rhythm and a flow. And that is when you speak smoothly and when you speak with a nice rhythm and a nice flow, people will enjoy listening to you. Okay? So the Pro 90D speech system is designed for people who are professionals or professionally minded and who really would enjoy and love speaking if they could speak well. It's designed for people who have opportunities, who have regular opportunities to speak, right? And to speak in front of people. Doesn't mean you have to stand up, but you have to speak in front of people. And there are reasons for this, and we'll talk about those reasons much, much later, but this is who this program is designed for. So it's for people who want to speak well, who need to speak well. And it's for people who want to take their speech and their career, and therefore their life, to the next level. So that means speaking for you is not a matter of convenience. Speaking well is not a matter of convenience, it's a necessity. It's not a convenience, it's a necessity. So there are people out there who they've gotten by with speaking the way they speak, speaking choppy, they've gotten by with avoiding speaking opportunities, speaking situations, and they would continue to get by that way, right? So it's not a necessity for them. And then there are those of you where you want to speak well as much as you need to breathe. There's a story about that, which we may talk about later, but when you need to speak well as much as you need to breathe, then you will speak well. You will speak well, right? But if it's convenience where, you know what, I can speak well or not, or I'll just do this later, then guess what? You may or may not speak well. So this program is designed for that. So if you're watching this, you're in this webinar, you're going to get the most from this if speaking is a necessity for you, right? You've lost job opportunities. You are about to start interviewing. You have your eye on a job. You're about to do your PhD exams or some other kind of licensing exam or degree exams. You need to do presentations on a regular basis or lead meetings, right? And you need this. You need to be able to speak well. In fact, you don't get points for not stuttering. You get points for being an excellent speaker. So if you're in an interview and all things are equal, right, and the one person doesn't stutter and the other person is an excellent speaker, who do you think is going to get the job? Who's going to get the more points? Well, not the person who just doesn't stutter. So this isn't really about stuttering. It's about becoming an excellent speaker. And yes, if you struggle with stuttering or stammering or fast speaking or fear of public, whatever it is, doesn't really matter. You can transform yourself into an amazing speaker and a powerful presenter, right? It's the same process. All the skills I'm teaching you are the same skills that people use who speak very well. In fact, if you study people who speak well, you'll see that they're using these skills. So speaking smooth, well, it can help you to diminish stuttering. It's really about speaking smoother. If you speak smoother, then you're not going to speak in a choppy manner. If you speak more rhythmically, you're not going to speak in a choppy manner. If you speak with the flow, you're not going to speak what? In a choppy manner. People are going to enjoy speaking with you. You're going to be able to speak better. You're going to be able to say what you want, when you want, the way that you want, if you're speaking smoothly, rhythmically, and with the flow. So stuttering takes care of itself. You're creating a new identity. We're not trying to not stutter. We're trying to help you speak well. That's very different from other programs out there. It's very different. So it's like comparing apples and oranges. So if anyone tells you, oh, well, you know, extending and blending and modeling and all that stuff is crap and it doesn't work and you don't have to do that, well, they are comparing apples and oranges, this program is not about helping you to stop stutter. It's about helping you become an excellent speaker. So let's talk about the first aspect of speaking well, and it has to do with flow. With flow. So when we talk about flow, we are talking about, in fact, give me just a second here. I'm going to go ahead and record this in another area. It's already being recorded in one area, but I'm going to record in another one. When we talk about flow, we're talking about two characteristics. One is speaking while having airflow, right? Speaking while maintaining airflow. And then the other one is having a rhythm, if you will, kind of a stream, a flow, a flowing to your speech. Your speech flows, okay? And flow is very much related to smoothness and rhythm, and I'll explain how that is in just a moment. So when you speak with a flow, it means you're not interrupting your speech. You're not speaking in a choppy or erratic or sporadic manner. You have a flow. You have a cadence and a rhythm, right? We'll talk more specifically about that when we talk about rhythm. It's a flow. So one aspect is the way that it sounds, the way that it feels to you, the way it sounds and feels to your listener. The other aspect is more mechanical and has to do with your breathing, So let's talk about the breathing first, because that's more important. In order to speak with a flow, in order to speak smoothly and rhythmically, you have to have what? You have to have air. There has to be air, right? You can't even whisper without air. So we have to breathe. We have to remember to breathe. So I'm going to give you in just a little bit an exercise that some of you may have heard about. And we'll talk about this exercise that you can use to develop greater airflow. But first I want to tell you just a few simple things that you can do to remind yourself to breathe and the importance of breathing. Number one is very simple. You tell yourself, that is, you remind yourself internally, remind yourself to breathe. Believe it or not, I can't tell you how many people I speak to who tell me that they just forget to breathe. So how do you forget to breathe? Well, people forget to breathe when they're speaking. They run out of air. It's a pattern, it's a habit, but it can be replaced with a new one. That's the good news. So whatever your patterns are can be replaced with new ones. So some people speak and they forget to breathe. So what do? You remind yourself to breathe. You say, remember to breathe. Remember to breathe, right? Now I'm going to give you something very specific that you can do to train yourself to breathe. One thing is to, in fact, let's do the exercises. When we do this exercise, then we'll extrapolate from the exercise some of the specific things you can remind yourself to do. And it's called the free flow speaking exercise. And we're not going to do all 3 or 4 phases. So you may hear me talk about it in 3 phases or 4 phases. Today, we're only going to talk about 3. I'm going to demonstrate 1 phase, the first phase, okay? And I may show you the 3rd phase as well. So the free flow speaking exercise is designed to help you speak with a freer flow, right? It's to help your words, your speech to flow. And what it does is it forces you to not interrupt yourself while you're speaking. It demonstrates to you that you can speak smoothly without stopping, right? Without blocking, as they call it, without stuttering. You can do this. It's called the free flow speaking exercise. The other thing that this exercise does is it teaches you that you can speak continuously without anticipating words. And say, uh-oh, here comes this word, I'm going to get stuck. You don't have to do that. You don't have to do that, right? You can speak without thinking and say what you want to say. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a few moments as well. So let's do the exercise. The exercise is this, and here's the thing. We go deeper in this exercise in a mini course that I have called 7 Steps to Quickly Achieve Smooth, Calm, Confident Speech. You can go to my website and look that up. It's one of my lowest cost courses. It's about $49. And we go deeper into all the things we're going to talk about and more in this course. So if you want to grab that course, you can do that. I've already sent you an email about it. But let's do the first part of this exercise. And it is, You're going to take a super deep breath, because when you have air, you have power. You take a super deep breath and you speak continuously without stopping. So you have to force yourself. You may have to do this several times, right? Because your brain has been wired such that you are used to literally interrupting yourself while you speak, to starting, stopping, and anticipating. So you literally have to force yourself to focus on maintaining airflow, nothing else. Don't think about the words. Don't think about what you're saying, the topic. You can say random stuff. You can talk about various topics. You can talk about anything you want, as long as you don't stop talking until you run out of air. Okay, let me say that again. Point of the exercise is to train yourself to maintain air flow. Airflow is critical to smooth speech. Exercise teaches you to maintain constant, consistent airflow. You take a super deep breath, fill up your lungs, fill up your chest, and you speak continuously until you run out of air. And it can be random, it can be various topics, and I'll demonstrate it for you in just a moment. So when I take this deep breath, I take it through my nose, not through my mouth. Take it through my nose. And I continue to speak. Now I can speak fast and slow. I'm going to do it twice for you. First time I'm going to do it fast. Second time I'm going to do it slower. Okay, here we go. Okay, so right now I'm going to start speaking fast, and I may say some random things, but I'm just going to keep on talking until I run out of air, and I can try to hold the air as much as I can, and I might just be saying random stuff, and if I don't know what to say, I'll just say I don't know what to say, and I'm almost about to run out of air, but I still have some air, and I know I'm speaking real fast, and I'm out of air now. Okay, so I talked about some few things, right? I talked about a few things, and it was pretty coherent, not completely, but pretty coherent. It wouldn't have mattered if I just said random things. The point is, I kept speaking until I ran out of air. Now I'm going to do it slower. And this is kind of like the second phase of the free flow speech. This is similar to the second phase. And I'm going to try to be a little more coherent in what I'm saying. So I'm going to slow down some. Take a super deep breath, speak till I run out of air. I'm going to be a little more coherent, but I'm not going to think about any specific topics, okay? But I might talk about a couple of specific topics. But right now I'm not planning. All right, so here we go. So what I just did is I took a super deep breath, and I'm taking my time. And basically what I'm talking about now is I'm talking about the free flow speaking exercise. And even though this is the first phase, this is very similar to the second phase. But if you notice, I'm being very consistent and I'm out of air. All right, so that time I was much more coherent, right? Much more careful about what I was saying. But my focus wasn't on what I was saying. It was on maintaining airflow. I didn't let myself interrupt myself while I was speaking. Do you get the idea? If you get the idea, go ahead and type into the chat box, yes, Michael, we get the idea. Okay? Type into the chat. In fact, you can just type yes. If you get the idea, you get the gist of the exercise. Again, if you want to go deeper, get that course if you don't already have it. But the idea is to retrain your speaking system to maintain constant airflow. Okay, now let me explain a little more about this free flow speaking exercise and how to use it. So one of the purposes of the exercise is to help you maintain airflow. The other purpose is to help you learn how to speak without thinking or speak while you think. So let me write this down. Very important. Okay. So one is to maintain constant or consistent what? What's the word we're looking for? Airflow. Okay. Second, it is to help you to speak without thinking or speak while thinking. Speak without thinking or speak while you think. This is important. This is important. It's very important. You just make sure you can see all of that. Okay. All right. Hopefully you can see that. So this is important because, and I've seen this, remember now, I've been watching people, I've been coaching people full time for the last more than 5 years. And I don't just coach people for 1 day or 3 days at a time. I spend initially for the first year or two, I spent 90 days or more with people. Now I spend, in fact, for the past several years, it's been 8 weeks, right? I changed it from 90 days to 8 weeks. Now I'm back to 90 days. Spend 90 days. Everybody, there's no more 8 weeks. There's just 90 days because I'm seeing it takes about that long. But I've spent between 8 to 12 weeks and sometimes longer. So I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours watching people and studying them and listening to them and refining this. And what we find is that people tend to interrupt themselves by anticipating. Have you ever anticipated a difficult word? Before you started talking or while you were speaking, you were scanning ahead and saying, I hope I don't have to say this word, or I know I'm going to have to say that word. And even before you got to the word, your speech started getting choppy. Right? It could even be you have to introduce yourself, or when you're going to get a certain kind of coffee, or a certain type of food, or there's a certain technical word or phrase. Work with people all the time that there's these technical phrases that they have to use, so they get anxious and sometimes they'll avoid it or they'll change it. Okay, so what we want you to learn how to do, just really natural speech, is speak without thinking, right? Just like you walk, you don't think about how you're walking. Once you learn how to play an instrument, you don't think about how your fingers are moving or whatever kind of instrument, or if it's a sport, you don't think about how you're moving your hands or arms or legs. You just do it after you learn the skill, after it becomes automatic, automaticity. It becomes automatic. After the neurons have been wired and insulated, it becomes automatic. Okay. So what happens is when you start speaking, if you know the language, you don't really have to think for the most part. You don't have to think about the words. You have an intent. You have a message that you want to communicate, right? And your brain goes in and finds the right words and the right grammar and the syntax and all of that goes into your language center, and it organizes everything and manages your speech so that you say what you want to say without having to think through the particular words and inflections and all of that. When you are learning, or when you're not very proficient in a language, then you have to think through that. So there's this interruption. That's why speech is choppy. So as I learned Spanish, I noticed how my speech may initially be choppy because I'm having to think about vocabulary, having to anticipate and think about this and how do I inflect and how do I pronounce this. But the more I speak it, the smoother my speech gets, and the less I have to think about what I'm saying. So if you know English, or you know whatever your language is, if it's Hindi or if it's Arabic, French or Spanish, whatever it is, then you don't have to think about the words. You don't have to think about what you're saying or how you can just say it. You can just flow. Free flow speaking exercise helps you get back into that mode where you can speak and say what you want to say without having to think about it. So phase one is just random, right? Take a super deep breath and you speak random. Phase two, which I'm not going to demonstrate, is similar to the second time I did it, where my speech was a little more focused, was a little more coherent, and you think about a specific topic, but you still take a super deep breath and you speak slower on that topic. Okay. What that does is you understand and you know that when you speak slower, you're also able to think. It gives your brain time to actually go in and pull out the information. The slower you speak, the more time you have, yet your speech is smooth. I've watched people do this. I say, okay, now slow your speech down and let's see how. And they slow their speech down and they're able to speak smoother and think clearer. So the slower they speak, I'm not talking about speaking monotone or dragging it on like that, right? You wouldn't be listening to me if I was speaking like, but when you speak slower, it gives you more time to think, gives your brain time to go in and capture the intent and the message when you slow your speech down, okay? So maintaining airflow, the purpose of this exercise, maintaining airflow, learn how to speak without thinking. So there are many times where you don't have to think at all. You can just speak. You have an intent. You have a message. You can communicate that message without really having to think through the words you're going to say. This trains you to do that, especially the second phase of it. It also trains you how, when you speak slower, to speak while you think or to think while you speak, either one, right? So you can think and still continue. You don't have to stop to think and then speak. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But we're training ourselves to speak smoother, not interrupt ourselves, okay? All right, so that's really the second phase of the exercise. The third phase, again, if you want to get more details, get that course, 7 steps. It's the third phase, and in some cases, I may explain this as the third or fourth phase, but you'll recognize it when you see it. But I'm going to call it the third phase now, is to take regular breaths, right? Like a normal breath, just in fact, a slightly more than normal breath through your nose, and speak in 3 discrete phrases, 3 distinct phrases, taking a breath in between. I am going to demonstrate this one. This one mimics and really is like normal speech, normal smooth speech. And you're going to speak on a topic. So I'm going to demonstrate this third phase, if you will. Okay, so basically what I just did is took a slightly more than normal breath, and then I paused and took another breath in between and said another phrase. And then I took a final breath, and now I'm saying my final phrase. So I just used the exercise to explain the exercise, right? What did I do? I took just a slightly more than normal breath. Often normal breaths are kind of shallow. And when you reprogram your breathing system, when people speak, they take in breath through their mouth and often a little through their nose, right? And they're just little shallow breaths to keep the diaphragm's just full enough, to keep your lungs just full enough so that you have air to speak. But people who struggle with running out of air, you need to do something a little different. What you need to do is to retrain yourself to breathe more regularly and more deeply. So this third phase will help you do that. That is, you can do this. In fact, I have people do it. When they're speaking to people, they take in, they remember to breathe before they speak. They pause, they stop. They take in a breath, and then they say a phrase, and they make sure that that phrase is consistent and continuous, like I just did. Let me do it again. I took in a breath, this time through my nose and my mouth, and I made sure that the phrase that I'm saying right now is consistent and it's continuous. So I didn't let myself stop. I didn't interrupt myself. Now, this is what it would sound like if I interrupted myself. So what if I decided that, I wanted to interrupt myself, then, okay, so what I would do is I would start and then I'd stop and then I would give myself greater, what do I want to say here? Right? So I would be interrupting myself, and every time I stopped, I'd be giving myself an opportunity to get stuck. What if there were words in there that I got stuck on, and all of a sudden I stopped and, okay, I got to get started again. I got to build this momentum. Uh-oh, here's a word I can't say. Now I got to use an Do you see where I'm going with this? So what you want to do is you want to speak with a flow. You want to make your phrases more consistent, more continuous. They don't have to be so long that people are like, oh God, when is this person going to stop speaking, right? You don't want to speak like that. But you do want to make your phrases a little longer. When I say long, it's relative. Some phrases are going to be longer, some are going to be shorter. But you want to make sure when you open your mouth, you take in a little more air than normal, and that your phrase is a little longer than you normally would. Just let yourself flow. Let that phrase flow. Okay. Now, here's another aspect. We're spending more time on flow because it's important, because smoothness is related to flow. Rhythm is related to flow. I'll give you some exercise to help with smoothness as well as rhythm. But it's all centered around flow, around airflow. So I want you to think about this. Those of you who are in technology, even if you're not, you'll understand this. And that is, have you ever been on a webinar or a video conference, or even watching something on the internet, watching a video or listening to audio, and you get this message that says your internet connection is weak, or there's a problem with your internet connection? When that happens, that means that the data is being interrupted. There may not be enough bandwidth. People will say, my internet is slow. So the data packets that's being transferred is just slowing down and it's interrupting the stream, right? The stream, the video stream or the audio stream is being interrupted because everything is slowing down. And when it gets really bad, then it starts to stutter, right? Why is my video game stuttering? It's because there's an interruption in the flow, in the stream, right? In the data stream. It's the same thing when you're speaking. You can speak slow, but you can have a steady stream, or you can speak in a variable or dynamic manner, like I'm speaking now. Sometimes I slow down and sometimes I speed up. So I'm not saying you have to speak super slow all the time. You want to speak in a dynamic or variable manner. But you want to speak in such a way where you're streaming your words and streaming your thoughts. So when you use this free flow speaking exercise, all 3 or 4 phases, you'll train yourself to speak while you think or to speak without thinking. You'll train yourself to speak in more continuous phrases without interrupting yourself so that you have a smoother, more consistent data flow or speech flow. Okay, so just picture that. You want to have a smooth, continuous stream when you're speaking. So don't interrupt yourself. Allow yourself, force yourself, practice speaking in slightly longer phrases while maintaining airflow. I was talking with a young lady, actually we were emailing, she's just taking my course, lives in India, and struggles with saying the name of her child. Many people struggle with saying their own name of child. So a little technique, again, that we talk about in the self-study as well as in the 7 Steps course. And it has to do with saying difficult words. And it's strategic. It's a tactic. It's a technique. It's strategic. It's a tool. It's not meant to be the whole system, the whole way that you speak every day using techniques and tools. It's not designed to do it. It's designed to give you a way to experience success now as you build your new speaking skills, you build your new habit. So by using introductory words sometimes, right, and by linking your words, we call this airflow linking, right, maintaining airflow, you're able to say whatever you want to say. So someone asks you your name, for example, some of you have heard me say this. So instead of just saying Michael, what if I had a problem saying Michael or Sam or Samba or whatever the name might be? If I had a problem saying that, then no matter what I do, if someone asks me my name, my brain's gonna say, you have a problem saying this. So what do? I need to trick my brain a little bit. I need to change the way I say it, not change what I'm saying, just change the way that I'm saying, to trick my brain to get some initial success. I've been doing this for decades now, and it works. I had a young lady, lived in Mexico, had a problem saying her name. Taught her this technique, and so she would just, someone would say, I forgot her name. Let's say it was Maria. So someone would say, okay, so what's your name? She'd say, it's Maria, right? It's Maria. Just a little quick, or my name is Maria. My name is Maria, right? And she would say that. So rather than just saying Maria, because if she thought Maria, her brain would instantly say, yep, you can't say that. She would have a hard time saying it. As soon as she threw in just a little or my name is Maria, she was able to say it. And then what happened? She started creating more successful speaking opportunities, more successful speaking experiences. And then she didn't have to say, she didn't have to say my name is when she didn't want, because now she knew she could say her name. So it's strategic, it's tactical to get you immediate success and then build on that later. So if anyone says, oh, that's tricks, and so yes, it is a trick. You're tricking your brain to experience success now so that you create a new speaking identity going forward so that you don't have to use those tools when you don't need to. But you have them. You have them so you feel more confident. You feel more confident, more calm. You're going to be able to say whatever you want to say. So I taught this lady via email. I just said, okay, blend the name in by saying, oh, her name is whatever it was. And she says, oh my God. She wrote me back, oh my God, I'm saying her name is so wonderful. I said, now go out and introduce your baby as often as possible, because it's different when you're under pressure, but it works. It works. In fact, if there's a word that I get stuck, and yes, sometimes I still get stuck, If there's a word that I feel like I'm gonna get stuck on, I just blend it in. I blend it in, right? So you blend it in, you say it in one continuous phrase, and then all of a sudden now you're saying, oh, okay, I can say this, it's no problem. And guess what happens? Eventually you stop thinking about that word as being a problem. And then you start speaking without thinking. And when you start speaking without thinking, then you no longer see the word. If you no longer see the word, you're no longer thinking about it. Well, guess what happens when you say it? Nothing happens. You just say it. Does that make sense? Right? That's what we're going for. We're not going for you having to use tactics and techniques and strategies for your whole life to say certain things or to speak. These are strategies and tactics and techniques to get you initial success while and as you build a new speaking identity, a new speaking style. Okay, so these are exercises to help you accomplish that. For those of you that are familiar with Pro 90 Speech System, a lot of it's based on modeling. Okay, won't spend a lot of time talking about modeling now. Just understand that modeling is very natural. Again, there's some people out there who don't like modeling. This is why do I want to lose my identity? It's inauthentic. Well, those people are misinformed because the way they learned how to speak their first language, and maybe even their second, was through modeling. When we're growing up, we model the people around us. That's one of the ways. We don't just learn by ourselves to speak a language. We learn it by listening and by modeling. In fact, you and I still learn things by observing, and sometimes it's called observational learning. Sometimes we're unaware that we're learning things. In fact, often we're unaware that we're learning things. We're watching TV and listening. We're modeling people and we don't know it. So modeling is very natural and you do it anyway. All we're doing is we're using it deliberately to help you create a new speaking identity, right? You don't want to be yourself in a high pressure situation. You want to be a better version of yourself. Sometimes you want to be someone else in that moment. You won't be someone else forever. When someone who's an athlete or a musician, when they model someone, they try to become, they try to embody their model until they develop their own, right? They embody their model until they develop their own. And that's what modeling is about. It's like a bridge that takes you over this valley, right? And the valley, you can take the valley to create a new speaking style, which is what many treatment and stuttering programs do, is it takes you through the valley. So you're working on air and you're working on pronouncing this and saying it this way and you're working on that, right? And yeah, it can work. I'm not going to say it doesn't work. It absolutely can work and probably does work for many people, but it's the valley. It's the hard way to go. Well, you may say, well, modeling is hard too. Well, modeling is a bridge and it gets you there faster. Why? If you focus on your model, it's what we call a positive distractor. Now you're not focusing on not stuttering and not getting stuck and on breathing and on this. You're focused on how does my model speak? How does my model speak? Well, it's a positive distractor, right? Again, we all use modeling. Athletes, professionals, artists, singers use modeling. You focus on how your model does it, opens up your creativity, allows you to move your activities towards a positive outcome as opposed to avoiding a negative outcome. When you try to stop stuttering, you're trying to avoid something and you'll often get the very thing you're trying to avoid. If you're modeling and or you're trying to speak smoother or more rhythmically or with the flow, you're going to be more likely to get that than if you're trying to avoid something. Does that make sense? So modeling gives you a global image, a global view of how you want to speak. And if you just practice speaking that way consistently and you focus on speaking that way, when you're under pressure, when you're not under pressure, right? You have to practice it every day, all the time. Practice it. In fact, we'll talk about practice. We'll talk about private practice and ambient practice. If you practice it, then you don't have to think necessarily about all the techniques when you're speaking. You just think about your model. It's challenging at first, but it becomes easier later. Whereas if you go through the valley with just techniques, and yes, I teach techniques and I teach strategies and all that, because you need to know what you're doing and why, but these are skills that people use to speak well, or you need to know what the skills are. But you can package all these skills up globally by just modeling someone. When I have to think about breathing and airflow and extending and blend, I just think, how does my model speak? Speak like my model, right? And you do that, it makes it easy. It's a bridge and it gets you there faster. Initially, it's challenging, but eventually it's easier. It's much easier and it's much better. All right, that's flow. Now let's talk about how flow is related to smoothness, okay? So when we're talking about smoothness, go ahead and if you're with me so far, go ahead and just type into the chat box, yes, we're with you so far, Michael. And I know some people have entered in some questions, and remember, I'm going to get to those once we're done with this content. We're already at 12:42, so obviously I'm not going to finish in 5 minutes. So we're going to be hitting that hour as we usually do, right? I try to do things in 30 minutes and end up taking an hour, but that's okay. I want to make sure I'm giving everything that you need to you. So let's get back to it. Let's talk about smoothness and rhythm. And this isn't going to take as long because the primary thing here is flow, giving you the exercise, free flow speaking. Oh, well, one of the things I did want to do is to demonstrate this third phase. This third phase, in fact, I did demonstrate the third phase to you. Very good. The third phase was take a normal breath and say 3 distinct phrases. It could be 4 phases, it could be 4 phrases, 5 phrases, 6, whatever it is. You're taking a normal breath. You're making sure that when you're speaking, your phrases are continuous. That was the third phase of free flow. You're going to be able to use that in these other aspects here as well. So let's talk about smooth speech. Smooth speech is probably what you hear me demonstrating now, right? It's uninterrupted speech. By uninterrupted, I don't mean you're not pausing, you're not taking a break to let the other person speak, or if you're presenting, you're not pausing to stop and breathe or just taking a dramatic pause or something. But it's uninterrupted, as in when I'm saying, when I'm delivering a thought, I'm not stopping myself in between. Smooth speech. How can you achieve smooth speech? Well, one way is by maintaining airflow, right? Big part. Another way is by, just put this down for you. So we're talking about now smooth. Another way is by doing something that we call extending your words. Extending your words. Extending your words. So when you speak and you extend your words, what you're doing is you're giving yourself greater control over your speech. You are relaxing yourself down when you extend your words because you're slowing your speech down. Your words generally become a little clearer, sometimes a lot clearer. You're articulating, which is a separate skill, but it's related. So when you extend your words, often you articulate as well. But extending your words also helps you maintain greater airflow. And when you maintain greater airflow and you extend your words, it makes your speech smoother, makes it smoother. Now, here's something about extending your words that's very interesting. Extending is a part of emphasizing, right? When we emphasize something, it makes your speech more vibrant. It accentuates your speech. So when you emphasize something, you're accentuating it, right? You're highlighting it. Now, what did I just do? Well, I emphasized the word extend and I emphasized the word accentuate. How did I do it? I did several things, one of which has to do with rhythm, right? I extended the word. I kind of broke it up a little bit. I inflected on the word, right? I articulated, I kind of over articulated those words. Why? Because I wanted to highlight it in your mind. I wanted to highlight, like I'm highlighting the word highlight. I wanted to highlight those words in your mind so that it had a greater imprint and impact on you. So extending your words has at least a double benefit. When you're speaking smoother and you're extending your words, it has at least a double benefit. One of the benefits is that it has a greater impact and highlights whatever you're extending in the mind of the listener, and it makes your speech smoother and easier and more pleasant for people to listen to. Now, here are some questions. Well, Michael, do we extend every word And how do we know which words to extend? A part of it's going to come from practice and from modeling. You listen to how your model speaks and see how often they extend and what they extend. So part of this comes from modeling, right? From practicing on your own. And some of it's just words that you feel like you want to emphasize. You can also extend words that you feel like you might have trouble with, right? So if there's a word that's coming up and you feel like you're in a struggle, I've watched some people extend or emphasize that word, and it helps them get that word out, right? So rather than being reactive, uh-oh, here comes this word, they're proactive and they're like, uh-oh, here comes this word, like, ooh, I'm going to jump on this word, right? So let's say emphasize is a word that I have problems with. So I would say I'm going to emphasize this word as opposed to I'm going to, right? Communicate, C. Sometimes I have trouble saying C words, right? So if I have trouble saying a C word, communicate, I might emphasize the word communicate. We're going to communicate this message today. So I might emphasize that word. I'm going to also blend the word. I'm going to maintain airflow and say communicate. I want to communicate. So what we do is when we emphasize something, it helps us say difficult words often. It helps us highlight the word in the mind of the listener. It helps make our speech smoother when we extend some of our words. No, you don't extend all of your words. If I were extending all of my words, it would sound like this. We don't want to do that, right? If you want to emphasize a particular phrase, then you may do something like that. If I'm overemphasizing, then I may overemphasize for effect. But you don't want to speak like that, right? It sounds weird and it sounds kind of monotonous. So never let anyone tell you, and don't think I'm saying, oh, Michael Williams says we have to extend all of our words. And then you hear people speaking like that. Oh, well, Michael Williams, Pro 90D, so I have to extend all my words. Oh, well, forget that program. That sounds weird. Well, that's not what I'm saying. I've never have said that. What I'm saying is when you extend some of your words, it gives you greater control. It gives you greater smoothness and greater flow. And it's a skill that you can use to highlight certain concepts and words when you're speaking, right? So everything that we do, not only is it going to help you diminish stuttering and stammering, but it helps you improve the quality and the power of your speech, of your speaking ability, of your ability to present well, okay? It's a double impact, a double benefit. Does this make sense? All right, so extending your words. Now, how can you practice this? You can practice it by using the free flow speaking exercises, all 3 or 4 phases. So if you notice, the second time I did the exercise, I spoke slower and extended a little bit more of my words, right? So you can practice it using the 3rd or 4th phrase. Let's call it the 3rd phase, where I broke it into phrases, right? And I extended my words a little more. When else can you extend your words and it helps your speech? In the beginning, when you first start speaking, if you extend your words like, so, okay, yes, right? Someone says, what would you like to order today? Sure, let's see. Notice how I'm extending my first few. And you don't think about what you need to say. You just say whatever you want and you extend your first several words to get it out. So that's the problem. People think, okay, I want this and I got to say this exactly like this. No, you don't have to. You can say whatever you want. You can say, oh, sure, yes, okay, great, all right, how are you? Whatever you want to say, it doesn't matter. Just say it, extend it, and then order whatever you want. Trust me. So extending those first few words, it helps. So you stop, you take a breath. Sure, you say some introductory words that don't even matter, and then you get to your order. And you blend your words smoothly. You take your time. Extending, big aspect of smoothness. So smoothness consists of maintaining airflow, and it consists of extending your words. You can practice extending your words with the free flow speaking exercise, and you want to practice when you're speaking to people, just emphasizing certain things that you're saying, right? Emphasizing certain things that you're saying. Let's talk about this third part here, okay, which is rhythmic speech. By rhythm, when it comes to speech, technically we're talking about cadence. I call it rhythm because I want you to picture a wave as you're speaking. I want you to picture a wave because in fact, when you're speaking, what is being transmitted are sound, waves, which can be measured. You can visually see the sound waves and it would look something like this depending on how you were speaking. So you want to picture waves when you're speaking. So someone who speaks using a more monotone, single tone might look like that, maybe not completely. So that would mean that they were speaking like this in one single tone. Someone speaking like this, someone who is speaking like this might sound like that, right? Might sound something like that. So here, one is showing more rhythmic speech. When I say rhythm, what I'm including is intonation, voice modulation, or inflections. There are job descriptions and job requirements that require or desire people who can speak with inflection. I had a guy who didn't get a job. I want you to listen to this because, again, some of you are here because you've lost job opportunities or you don't want to lose job opportunities. One guy, totally qualified, didn't get a job primarily because they told him, you didn't sound like you were really that enthusiastic or enthused about the job. You didn't sound excited about it. Well, he was excited. He was qualified. He just didn't sound like it. And a major part had to do with voice inflection and voice tone. I've seen job descriptions that said desire or required someone who can speak. This is technical jobs, right? Someone can speak with voice inflection. This is very important. So again, if someone tells you, oh, voice inflection, forget about that. This is the way you need to speak. Well, yeah, if you just want to stop stuttering, but remember, you don't get points for not stuttering. You get points for being an excellent speaker. I'm teaching you how to be an excellent speaker. And if you become an excellent speaker, what happens to the stuttering? It diminishes or disappears, or it reduces to normal disfluent levels. When I say normal disfluent levels, I mean everyone is disfluent, a certain percentage, usually it's about 5%, right? So I'm a little disfluent, just like everyone else is. What you're going to find, though, is when you do the Pro 90 speech system, you're actually going to be more fluent than the average person. Okay, so when we talk about rhythm, we're talking about really cadence. We're talking about having voice inflection as well as extending certain words. So it's your whole rhythm, your rhythmic way of speaking. It also contains breathing. It contains breathing. So you need air in order to inflect, you need air in order to extend, you need air in order to emphasize certain things, right? So you want to maintain constant smooth airflow. You want to modulate your voice or inflect. I call it inflecting your voice up and down like this. Sometimes you want to extend your words. You also want to articulate your words, right? Articulate. All that has to do with rhythm. One of the best ways to pick up a new speaking rhythm, right, is to model someone who has a rhythm. It could be me or it could be someone else, right? You listen to how they speak and you model their rhythm and you'll develop your own, right? You'll take their rhythm and you'll modify it, but first master theirs and then eventually you'll develop your own. So what's important here is that you understand that speaking with a rhythm makes your speech more pleasant. It makes it more powerful, right? If you're speaking with a rhythm. Someone who's not speaking with a rhythm may be speaking like this, and maybe they're speaking in a monotone and speaking in a choppy manner, and it just is not going to be not going to have much impact, right? So if someone's speaking like this, they're monotone, they're choppy, it doesn't have any impact. You're just, God, oh my, look at my phone, let me go on the internet. let me book tickets, let me go to Amazon, right? You're just not listening to the person because they don't have a rhythm to the way that they speak. So one of the easiest ways for you to develop rhythm is not to try to do it on your own, though you can, right? Just start practicing modulating your voice more, right? Is to model someone who has a rhythm. And what will begin to happen is when you practice modeling, I'm going to talk about practice in just a moment. Practice modeling, you practice in private, and then you practice in public. Call this private practice and ambient. Ambient meaning that which is around you. You're in the environment that's around you. So let's begin to wrap up with this practice. How can you take everything we talked about today, and you'll get a replay of this, or you'll get a link where you can watch it so you can go back through it, is you take what we said today. How do you practice speaking with a rhythm? Go back to the free flow speaking exercise, and you take the first part, second part, third part, and you practice modulating your voice and speaking with a rhythm. How do you know what rhythmic speech sounds like? You pick someone who has rhythmic speech. You can hear it, you see it, right? And you practice speaking like them. You practice in private, you practice consistently. You can't just take this, go, wow, that was really good. Hey, okay, I'm going to practice a few days. It's not going to do it. You got to practice over a sustained period of time. You're literally rewiring your brain, my friends. It's not going to happen in a couple of days. It's not going to happen in a couple of weeks. It can start to happen in a few weeks, right? You can experience the placebo effect in a day, an hour, and a few days, which could last for a week or 2 weeks. But to permanently rewire your brain, it takes several weeks to create that new wiring, and then it takes several months to make it automatic before it just becomes automatic. Doesn't mean you start here and then several, and then all of a sudden 7 months later it's automatic. No, it becomes automatic, right? So you got your private practice. You need to spend a certain amount of time, I'd say about 30 minutes. And then you have your ambient or public practice, which means you need to immerse yourself in this process. Immersing yourself in the process means you practice this every day and every speaking opportunity. You immerse yourself in by thinking about this, by watching it, by listening to it, by speaking it. You have to immerse yourself, because if not, your dominant way of speaking and your dominant way of thinking will take over. It will control the way that you feel, the way that you speak, right? The way that you are, because it's dominant. The wiring is there. In order to make new speaking patterns and thinking patterns more dominant, what do you have to do? You have to use them all the time, not just sometimes, not just when you're under pressure. So here's the problem. Some people, we're at 1 o'clock and I'm going to wrap up now. Some people feel like, okay, I'll just use this when I need to use it. It's not going to work real well then. You got to use it all the time so that when you're under pressure, the wiring is there and you can use it. Does that make sense? So you take these techniques, these strategies in terms of flow, speaking with the flow, speaking smoothly, speaking with a rhythm. You practice them consistently every day in private, and then you practice them in public. Now, obviously, when you're in public, you don't take a super deep breath. You take a slightly more than normal breath, and you practice speaking in slightly longer phrases. You practice modulating your voice more. Then you go back home and you practice. You go out and you create opportunities to do this. Okay? Now, here's what you need to do. Those of you who want to and who need to get the edge on your competitors, as you're applying for jobs, you want to advance your career, you have competitors. You have people, other people are going to be applying for those jobs. They're your competitors. You want to get the edge on them, you got to improve your communication, your speech. If you want to take your speech to the next level, if you need to take your speech to the next level, the same way you need air, and you want to accelerate this process, here's what I want to say about acceleration. I've done some quick calculations, and it's fairly accurate. Actually, the numbers probably be a little different. And I found that it takes the average person who does the self-study route about 2 years to get to the same place as it takes someone else about 8 weeks of coaching. So when I work with them in coaching, they're able to get to the same place in about 8 weeks, let's call it 8 to 12 weeks, as it takes someone else 2 years or more. Why? Distraction and discouragement. When you're working by yourself, people can get distracted and discouraged. So they're in and out. And eventually they get there. It just takes them longer. So if you want to get the edge on your competition, if you want to take your speech to the next level and you want to accelerate that whole process, you're going to want to get in touch with me about private coaching. So if you're losing income opportunities, if you're not doing things that you know that you're capable of doing, the time is passing anyway. You're losing opportunities that may or may not come back around. And it's totally up to you. I don't want to work with people where speaking well is a convenience. I want to work with people where speaking well is a necessity. So if this is a necessity for you, then get in contact with me. If it's convenience, take the self-study, okay? So remember that. If you want to accelerate the process, get in touch with me. Let's set up an assessment session where I'll assess your speech, assess your needs, and I'll tell you, quite frankly, do the self-study or the Pro 90 speech system is not for you at all, because you just want to improve. You just want to stop stuttering. So yeah, this can help, but you might want to find something else. If you want to become an excellent speaker, Pro 90D is for you. If it's a necessity and you love speaking and you want to be a powerful presenter and you want to speak smoothly, right? And you want to accelerate the process, you're going to want to get in touch with me. For those of you who are not ready for that, check out the self-study or even check out the 7 Steps course, which I told you is like $49. I'm going to send you a link on that. Go look at that. If you want the whole package on how to present, you want everything that you need, including the 7 steps, you're going to want to do the mobile self-study ultimate. If you're ready to accelerate this process by up to 10 times, it's probably longer than that. I've had people in my courses for years. Yes, their speech has improved, but nowhere near where it could, right? You want to accelerate this process by 10 times? Think about that, 700 in some days to 60 days or 90 days. Then come talk to me, okay? I'm gonna look at some questions here. I hope this has been helpful for you. And let me just see if I can answer some questions. All right, I'm gonna scroll down here. Will you be posting the replay? Yes, the replay will be on YouTube. Oh, before I answer these questions, I wanna do a drawing. Actually, let me just look at a couple of questions, then I'm gonna go back and do a drawing real quick. Just before I have to speak, heartbeat accelerates. I can focus on breathing deeply. And when I'm stuck, I can come out of it. How to get my words out in such a situation. All right. It says you can focus on breathing deeply. And when you're stuck, you can come out of it. How do I get my words out in such a, so if you're able to pause, to stop, to take a deep breath, what often happens is a person tries to repeat the same word that they tried to say earlier, but your brain is already locked in to say, you can't say that word, you're going to get stuck. What do you have to do? You need to add some other words to that. So if, again, the word is communicate, you have to say communicate. You can take a deep breath and you can do that, and sometimes it'll come out, or you can say, so we have to learn how to communicate. So I just added some words in there before communicate and blended them with communicate. So what you're doing is you're literally changing the word from communicate to we have to communicate, or we have to learn how, or try to, or use, right? You're just adding some words to that, blending it together, making it one word. This is a technique and strategy until you start speaking without thinking. Okay, without you don't even see communicate, you just say it, right? Once you think about it, once you're aware of it, then you have to do something. You take the breath and you blend. It's called airflow linking. I teach this in the larger course in the Pro 90D self-study. You got to practice it. It probably would be your number one tools. And yet, again, if ever I get stuck, it's the technique that I use naturally without thinking about it. It's a technique. In fact, it's not a technique. It's a technique that people use without thinking about it. The brain automatically goes back when someone's speaking and they can't say something. They'll throw in an or or they'll go back and say it again, right? Well, what we're doing is we're mimicking that by by using it as a tool. We're using it as an actual conscious tool. So hopefully that answers your question. You do the breathing, but then you have to change the way you're saying the word. Change the way. If you don't change the way you're saying the word, you may try to push it out, you may not be able to get it out. All right, I'm going to answer some more questions. How do my programs? You don't have older Pro 90 programs. You don't have new Pro 90. You don't have this. Any of those. Type in no, I don't have it in the chat box, because from there I'm going to select one person. Type no and type the country that you're from. Okay. Type no and then type the country you're from, and I'm going to make a selection to give someone one of our programs, and it'll probably end up being the mobile speech self-study, the mobile self-study ultimate version. It's $380 some. I'm going to give that away, give you access to one person for remaining until the end. So you want to type no, I don't have it, and then you want to type the country that you're from. Okay, go ahead and do that while I answer some questions. Why do I only stutter when I'm nervous? Great question. This is very normal, even for people that don't stutter. When some people get nervous, right? They've never really stuttered technically, but when they get nervous, they start to stammer, they start to stutter. It's just speech gets choppy. And there are lots and lots of different reasons. One reason is that for some reason in the past, you had an experience where you got nervous, and one of your responses was for your speech to become choppy, for you to either lose airflow, right, to not have air to be able to get started, or to begin stumbling over your words. And so your brain says, okay, whenever we get nervous, this is how we're supposed to speak. This is how we are supposed to speak. So you start speaking that way. Okay, so it's just a pattern. Some people, when they get nervous, they start sweating, or they forget what they're going to say. Their mind gets cloudy. Okay, all different kinds of things. So the truth is, stuttering when people get nervous is kind of a natural reaction, even for people that have never technically stuttered, never clinically stuttered. Okay. So that's one of the reasons. But there is something you can do. You can retrain yourself to speak well, even if and when you feel nervous. Right? There are times where I speak and I feel nervous, but I still speak well. Okay. So you can learn to relax yourself and learn to calm down, but there might be times where you still feel nervous, but you can still speak well. You don't have to respond by stuttering. There is something you can do about that, and you can learn that in my courses or through the coaching. All right. Let's see. How to stop yourself from sweating and shivering when you get stuck. Kind of calm yourself down. Right. Well, without going through a whole course, one of the most important things everyone can learn from here is talking to yourself. You have to learn to talk to yourself. Like talking yourself down. Just relax. That's okay. You got stuff. And believe me, you have time to talk to yourself because you do it anyway. When you're speaking and you anticipate you're talking to yourself, and you think, oh no, I hope I don't get, you're talking to yourself. So all you change the direction of that speech. Just relax, calm down. It's okay. Just say it this way. Do this. You talk to yourself. You encourage yourself. You kind of. That's one huge, probably the most important way. Nothing else happens unless because you only remember to breathe if you don't tell yourself, just breathe, just relax and take a deep breath. So talking to yourself, taking deeper breaths, right? Sometimes changing your posture, using body language, using your hands can help you. When people get stuck and they get real anxious, they get tight, they get nervous, and then they start focusing, okay, I'm stuttering, I hope I don't keep. You talk to yourself, you breathe, you move, you extend your words more, you model, you focus your attention on your mouth. So all of these things, once again, if you don't have the course, get the course because it's in there. It's in there. All of this is in there. But those are some really quick things you can do. Talk to yourself, remind yourself to breathe, Start extending your words more. Extend them naturally. You don't want it to sound weird. Use your body. When you use your body, you're expending energy. You're not storing up that energy, which then tries to come out in your speech, and then, right, use your body. Okay. All right, let's take a look and see what we have here. Okay, we got USA, Ghana, USA, no, you don't have it, no, you don't have it. India, connection was interrupted, didn't understand who should write no. You have some studies, we don't have the mobile self-study. Okay, so if you have any of my self-studies, then you wouldn't enter because you have something. This is going to be for someone that doesn't have anything. All right, so I hope that answered your question. No, you don't have it. Afghanistan, all right. Spain, sometimes you have fluent speech for 2 weeks again. All right, very good. Okay, so what we're going to do this time is, okay, we got one new message. All right, don't have the self-study. Indian self-study, okay. What? Okay, this is what I'm going to do this time. This is what I'm going to do this time. All right, I found 2 people that I want to, I'm actually going to give this away to 2 people. I'm going to give self-study to someone from India. Rebello, I believe that's the name. Santan Rebello. All right, Santan Rebello, you're going to get a self-study in Hamid from Afghanistan. So if you didn't get it this time, don't worry about it. This is not something that I do in fact, I've never done this. And this is not something that I'll do very often, is give away self-studies. There's a reason for that. When you invest in something, it's usually more valuable. When you get something for free, and I know some people say, oh, it's not true, but trust me, it is true. Because even if you can't afford to pay the full price of self-study, if you pay something, you've invested something in it, and it's a little more valuable. So if you didn't get it, it's a drawing, and that means that not everyone is going to get it. So congratulations to those 2, one from India, one from Afghanistan. Be sending you your links shortly after this webinar. Thank you all for joining me today. You will get a link to this. Let me see if there's some more questions. For those of you that need to leave, feel free, but you are going to get a link to this. And I may or may not provide an audio for you to listen to. I just have to take a look at some things. So before we wrap up and I continue to answer some questions, once again, if you're out there and you're a professional and you need to accelerate this process of improving your speech, you want to go ahead and get in touch with me. I'll send you a link. Contact me. Let's set up an assessment session. I'm also going to be having a 2-hour workshop before you go. It's the last thing I'll say before some of you leave. I'm going to be having a 2-hour workshop. The workshop is free. It's limited to 8 people, and we're going to be practicing the smooth speech and presentation skills. Pro90 speech system is focused on professionals that have to present well. So we'll be practicing some of the exercises for smoother speech and using it to make presentations. It's going to be for 2 hours, limited to 8 people. And I may eventually cut that down to 6, but 8 people. And even though it's free, you're going to have to put down a $10 deposit. It's refundable at the end of the workshop. Why am I doing that? Because there are people who register, don't show up, and they've taken the seats for people who are serious. So you register, you pay $10, you attend. I can only take 8 people. So when I get more than 8, I'm going to refund everyone else or schedule you for the next one. It's totally up to you. But only 8 people. You register, you pay $10. When you attend, you get your $10 back. If you don't attend, you don't get it back. Okay? Yes, you can attend the next one. And that's the way that we're going to do that. Because I'm going to spend time with you, coaching you, giving you evaluation and feedback that you're going to be able to use to improve your speech in this 2-hour workshop. So that's why we're keeping it limited to 2 people. I'll be sending you some information on it. I'll be scheduling it. It'll probably be, in fact, it will be in August. It'll be on a Saturday. and it will go from maybe 11 a.m. Eastern, so an hour before this time, till about 1 o'clock, right? 2 hours. I'll send you the information, okay? Once again, a few things. One, if you won Afghanistan and India, I'll be sending you links. Two, if you didn't win and you don't have a program, you're going to want to go ahead and restart with 7 steps. Okay. If you want the full program, then you want to get hold of the self-study. If you want to accelerate the process, you're going to want to contact me so we can set up a one-on-one private session. All right. I'm going to answer some more questions and then we'll be done.